I am again thrilled to welcome Amy Cutler here tonight, and our esteemed drawing professor, Joan Linder, will be introducing her. So I will turn it over to Joan. Oh, sorry, one more word I forgot. Before I turn it over to Joan, I would like to acknowledge that the land on which the University at Buffalo operates, which is the territory of the Seneca Nation, a member of the Haudenosaunee Six Nations Confederacy. This territory is covered by the Dish with One Spoon Treaty of Peace and Friendship, a pledge to peaceably share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. It is also covered by the 1794 Treaty of Canandaigua between the United States government and the Six Nations Confederacy, which further affirmed Haudenosaunee land rights and sovereignty in the state of New York. Today, this region is still the home to the Haudenosaunee people, and we are grateful for the opportunity to live, work, and share ideas in this territory. And with that, Joan Linder.
Thanks, Becky, and thanks everybody for showing up tonight for this talk, especially Amy. I cannot tell everybody how thrilled and delighted I am to finally, after eons, have Amy talking to everybody here at the University of Buffalo. I had the great fortune to work alongside her nearly 25 years ago at a very special art, I will call it summer camp residency program called Skowhegan, a school which is out in Skowhegan, Maine. And I got to see Amy's work develop, I think, in some pretty early stages for where it's come to. And I followed it for all these years. So yeah, with that, let me tell you a little bit about her. For nearly 25 years, she's made enigmatic narrative works in art, which internalize emotions, societal observations, and complex ideas that are transformed into visual metaphors. She's best known for very detailed drawings and paintings on paper depicting anthropomorphized objects, animals, female characters engaged in impossible tasks and unlikely situations. While the majority of her work is gouache on paper and graphite drawing, her first major sculptural work, Alterations, was commissioned and exhibited and acquired by the Museo Nacional Centro de Reina, Sofía in Madrid in 2007. In 2014, she was among a small group of artists invited to Site Santa Fe to create new works to commemorate the 20th anniversary of the institution. The resulting work, a multimedia sculptural installation entitled Fossa, was exhibited at Site Santa Fe in 2015, and the following year in New York at Leslie Tonkonow Artworks Projects, and was then reinstalled at the Rubin City in San Antonio, Texas in April 2023. She received her BFA from Cooper Union in 1997, and like I already told you, attended Skowhegan in 1999, and the Staatliche Hochschule für Bildende Kunst in Frankfurt am Main from 1994 to 1995. She's shown in museums throughout the world and the United States. Her work is in so many collections, too many to even name. I found this really beautiful quote from Aidan Dune in the Irish Times from a little more recently, 2019, and I just wanted to read it to share somebody else's thoughts on her work. Delivered in a gentle representational style that recalls children's book illustrations or Indian Mughal miniatures, Amy Cutler's works on paper tap into folk and fairy tales. But as you look more closely, rather than embracing a reassuring fictional world of cozy, if usually patriarchal certainties, they undercut it. Despite glimpses of the ordinary and the mundane, such activities as laundering or spinning, for example, any obliquely implied narratives are difficult, even impossible to follow, as the scenes often exhibit a dreamlike illogicality. Anyways, so yeah, totally psyched to hear and see your work, Amy.
Thank you. Am I on?
I think so.
Good.
Yeah, you're on, so. Yeah, we can already see your presentation. So yeah, feel free to jump in.
Okay. Okay, great. So I put this as a thank you so much for having me, Joan and Becky. This is so great to be here. So I'm just going to jump in and start with I put this image up, and it's called Raggedy Ann in a walnut shell. I made it when I was like 3 or 4, but I look back at this, I still have this, as pretty much it sums up everything I continue to do. I always take from multiple sources. I'm always fascinated in the miniature and creating a world from the unseen. So that was there a long time ago. And it's kind of funny because I also, when I was in primary school, I used to run home every day and watch Little House on the Prairie. So I was kind of obsessed with these girls in pinafores. So I'm going to start off way back in 2001, just to show you how things have and haven't changed. I used to work on wood, and this is casein and flash. And so you could see several motifs throughout the years. I've stuck with braids, women, and different entanglements. So this is 2002, another piece on wood. And this was sort of when I departed from the wood, because I started to get so excited about the white and the negative and the positive areas. And I realized that I didn't want to use the wooden structures anymore. Or not. And but I'm going to talk about hair, and I have to make this a little smaller. Okay, so a lot of my work is concentrated on memories and visceral feelings. So throughout this presentation, I'm going to show you some references and some sketches and things, because I'm always asked, where do the ideas come from? So hopefully in this presentation, I'll be able to share some of them. But this was something that happened in my primary school, is that why isn't this where I have to press it here? Okay. We would be asked to come in after recess and put our heads down on the tables. And I just remember this as a long passage of time and just smelling the Clorox. So that's a huge memory for me. So in dealing with the hair, it's also about how long did it take these women to grow it? And up top here, I have this fancy laser pointer. Over here, they're growing, those are spools of hair that were grown, and from the girls that have their heads down the table, and it goes up to the second floor, and it's collected, and then each group of 4 will tow the house until it's the next group's turn. So this is also an older piece, 2003, again with the hair. This was inspired by a present, I saw Pina Bausch and a performance, and there was this one dancer in the middle, and she had this long, it was not real hair, but she was whipping it around, and it made this intense noise. And so I'm always thinking of the opposites and what's missing. So I was really excited about the sound element of that. So I wanted to bring it back to the studio and investigate how in 2D you could invite sound in. So you have empty cages here that would invite birds. And I see these women as like street hawkers selling their wares. And so right here is where, like, this their costume is, I was thinking about like a Ukrainian traditional dress, but where I actually got the motif from was this right here is from a young, I think it's a young Indian boy's dress. So that's sort of where I just pick and choose from different things that cross in front of me, sort of thing. 2000, this is around the same time, just talking about the hair and the trees are present. And then this 2006, see, now I've moved on to just working on on paper, and these are gouache. And what I'm thinking about here is creating your own path. And what these women are doing is they're gathering up these long reeds with this thin red string. And then this thing keeps on going away. And they have these shoes with clippers on them. So as they move forward, they're creating their own path. And what I was thinking about general in generations in my family, like I had reached the age, I think I was around 30, and I wasn't married, didn't have a house and all that stuff. And that was just like, no one before me had been in that situation. And so I was thinking about that sort of situation. And likewise in this, it's called Plotline. And this is happening in 2006. And these women are sort of doing like a musical chairs where they rotate around these 4 houses, and they each have a tree sapling on their back, and around their long necks they have a cowbell and a key, sort of again referencing domestication of cows and women. And so this is when I started looking for an apartment, and you have to present yourself in a certain way. You know, as an artist, you're not looking very good financially, or I wasn't. So you try to present, I was thinking of like the little black dress, but this is my navy blue. This is called Souvenir, around the same time. This is actually 2004, so it's a little earlier. And this is about ideologies and where knowledge is taken away from younger people. I was thinking about like Hitler Youth and any kind of military situation. And the idea came from this bread box. And I just was staring at this and something I bought at a flea market or something. And I just thought, well, I want to literally take their vision away. So that's what's happening here. These are the silhouettes of birds, and they've stolen the eyes. And this is, the kilt is in reference to, I went to an all-girls Catholic school. I didn't wear these fancy socks or anything or carry, these are parachutes. I was really into military garb, portraying it in my paintings at the time, but the skirt itself was what I wore in high school. And then working through the gallery that I was showing at was always asked if the work that I made were self-portraits, and I never had seen them that way, even though they're inspired by things that happened in my life. So I just took that as a literal idea, and I made, this is called Army of Me, after the Bjork song, and it's 2003. And so I'm standing, I don't look like her, but that's me representing the little me's, and I'm about to send them off to their next adventures, and everyone feels a little bit different about it. But I guess, you know, I'm always had the same kind of hairstyle, and I always pull it back. So another way of doing self-portraiture is also seeing myself at 3 different stages of my life, and how I'm stuck mentally in these stages when I think back. And then the more current one, and this was done in 2007, so I've moved past this, but she's split open and there's a lot of little different minds inside. So this is about moving on and indecisiveness. And then you go on to, a lot of my work has a lot of anxiety in it. So I was looking at where the home of anxiety is, and it resides in your head. So I was just thinking, wouldn't it be great if you could just take it off and just lay it aside? So it's not violent, like a decapitation. There's no blood. It's just like this, a little rest. And then, so this one also, what is 2010, is called Undesirable Circumstances. So we have all these women and they're waiting around, but they're sort of recognizing themselves and others, and some of them are even exchanging heads and just sharing in the moment. This one, 2016, I'm still running with the theme. I jump back and forth. Sometimes I need to revisit this idea. So this is another one where the woman in the center is sort of like a salesperson, and all these headless women, they have in the gestures of their body, it's sort of like they're interested in what she's selling, but you don't know if they're ready to regain the conscious world. So they're just hanging out there. And then, because I'm dealing with the head and the anxiety, I decided to open it up. And here I see it as like a medicine chest, or like where everything is stored and organized. So I have some shelves in there. And then the title of this is You Were Always on My Mind. It's the Willie Nelson song. And this was just about when you have a thought stuck in your head and it's from an individual, and how different thoughts come together to make up the way you think. And I was at the time sort of deciding if I wanted to keep or reject those ideas, because I could hear like my mother's voice or whoever it was. And then again, going back to that older painting, you have the loose eyeballs, where if you've been misdirected. And then I had this reoccurring dream where I go to the beach, take off my hand, place it in a Ziploc bag and bury it, and I'd lose it. And it was like so much anxiety because and I don't know how I zipped the Ziploc and buried it, but I had I no longer had hands. And as a creative person, you can imagine that's not a good feeling. And then this one, let's see. This one, I think this one's called Rumination. Just trying to keep up with the dates. It's around 2014. So this is, do I have a close-up? Okay. So there's a reflection and the scene happening twice. And again, I'm using these empty bird cages because I use birds a lot in my work to represent migrating thoughts. So these women are in this like place where they don't have access to their thoughts, and they really like to welcome some in. It's like it's stress, it's depression, it's all these things. And what this is a little chocolate version of a woman. So they have the head of that chocolate woman. So they're just like examining it. And this one is 2000. Let me see. Okay, turn the page, 2003. And I bring this older one up because this is where I'm thinking about braids in a different way emotionally. So this woman, she's getting her braids cut off, and I had seen like a long time ago. It's inspired by this girl in my, I don't know, second grade class that had really, really long hair, and she used to touch it like it was a little ferret. It was just like very strange to me. And then also I remember watching this talk show where these women cut off their hair and they were crying. So there's all this emotion tied into this length of hair. So then I started this hair mill was the start of the idea behind Fossa, which is the installation that's up right now in San Antonio, Texas, where it's a self-sufficient society. So these women are growing their hair, they're weaving it, it's becoming their blankets. It's like the driving force behind the whole society. And then they go on to make the braids, which become sound conduits of sound. So they're like telephone wires. So this is just another view of one of the women in the trees with the hair. And I don't know what happened. Oh, Wait, to tell you what this is.
Hey, I'm Adriana Papaleo.
Hey, this
I'm
is-
a hairstylist based in New York City and a session artist
No, I
as
can't
well.
pause.
And want to welcome you to
Stop.
Fossa. It's a collaborative piece done with a painter whose name is Amy Cutler, whose work is absolutely incredible. This is really sort of a 3D representation of the world that she creates. She tells a lot of stories with hair. Hair for her represents femininity, it represents, vanity, but it also represents the passage of time, the amount of time that hair would take to grow and the care that it would take to braid all of that. It feels like this secret, like special society of women somewhere that there's something about them in their eyes and the things that they're working on.
Yeah. Amy,
The first inspiration about
Um,
Fossa came from the idea of an
What
antique
happened?
the videos is
operator. The
moving.
braids themselves are
How do I
Can you
pause?
pause it?
so they go through the walls beyond the house into.
Now I can see it.
So you
Uh-oh.
could sit down here on this bundle.
Can I start it over?
You want to put on the headphones.
If you can,
Um,
actually, because we
on
couldn't
either
see
side,
the
there's
beginning,
two
it wasn't
separate
moving.
compasses
So
there.
maybe if you just start it
One
over.
pairs
How
of
do I
knobs
stop
is a
it?
volume and a pan for each track.
Oh,
So the concept is that you come.
do I just go back? I'm so sorry. I wanted to explain it before it turned on.
And it just, well, now you pause it. So maybe you can explain it and then start it
Okay.
over. Yeah,
Yes,
'cause I
okay.
wasn't sure if it was just my end, but a student
No.
let me know it was frozen for her
I
as
saw
well.
the chat go. Thank you so much for letting me know because I did accidentally push a few buttons.
I
So-
thought maybe it was about to start up again. Sometimes there's just a lag, but yeah, maybe you
No,
explain.
it was me.
Start
It was
over.
me not knowing what I was doing. So anyway, Adriana, so I was invited by, I think Joan had said, Santa Fe invited me to come back. I had a show there, but then they were inviting some of the people that had shown to come back and do a collaborative piece. So it was really interesting because I always work alone. It's just like me and my brushes. And then so they give me this opportunity and I immediately froze and like, I know I can't make in 9 months, I can't make enough to fill up a room with my paintings and it didn't make sense to work with another painter. So I was in conversation with my musician friend, Emily Wells, and I had done some album covers for her. And so we always wanted to work together, but didn't know how. And so she immediately was like, let's do this. And so instantly the installation became about sound. And it also was my first chance to do a collaborative and also work in a way that didn't include figures that I made. So it was like, the viewer was embodying the space from my paintings and drawings. So that was really exciting. So Adriana Papaleo, the woman that's speaking in this video, is a hairstylist and a good friend of Emily. And so she joined us and she was amazing. And she took on all of the sourcing of the braids, and her girlfriend braided all of this. It's like over 800 feet of artificial hair. It was quite a endeavor. And so I will start the video over if I can. Because she's really good at explaining it. I'm really impressed with her. But how do I start it over? Let's see.
Does it not have the control? Like, didn't it have the little play stop thing? I wonder how we get that
I
back.
don't know how to rewind. Oh, maybe if I just go next, maybe it'll just start.
Oh, yeah. Go back and then forward because it wanted to start automatically.
Yeah, but it's not starting. Oh, there you go. Hey, now it's gonna work.
Hey,
No
I'm
more
Adriana
touching.
Papaleo. I'm a hairstylist based in New York City and a session artist as well. And want to welcome you to Fossa.
Okay.
It's a collaborative piece done with a painter whose name is Amy Cutler, whose work is absolutely incredible. This is really sort of a 3D representation of the world that she creates. She tells a lot of stories with hair. Hair for her represents femininity, it represents, vanity, but it also represents the passage of time, the amount of time that hair would take to grow and the care that it would take to braid all of that. It feels like this secret, like special society of women somewhere that there's something about them in their eyes and the things that they're working on. The first inspiration about Fossa came from the idea of an antique switchboard operator. The braids themselves are conduits of sound. So they go through the walls beyond the house into forever. So you would sit down here on this bundle and you want to put on the headphones. And on either side, there's two separate compositions. Each one of these pairs of knobs is a volume and a pan for each track. So the concept is that you come in and you start to interact with the piece. This is the first time that Amy has ever done a collaboration. It is also the first time that Amy's work has ever been featured without figures. So when you come into the piece, you become the figures in Amy's work. The process of making the hair for Fossa was about an 8-month process. It consists of just under twice the height of the Empire State Building in hair, just over 800 feet of braids. The braids that are the big ones in the hive and on the bundles, those are synthetic. However, all of the smaller braids that are in the bundles that are hanging out here and all of the braids on the headphones, that's actually human hair. There was a definite life that the human hair had, which is kind of creepy, but that's the whole beautiful thing about hair. So the energy of the human hair we felt like was really important for things that people were going to be more tactile with. I knew that it couldn't just be an everyday braid. I had to figure out how to elongate it. So I started researching antique rope making and antique thread making techniques. You know, I asked my girlfriend who was sitting on the couch just to hold an end of a hair, and I started spinning it and pulling it and spinning it and pulling it and spinning it and pulling it. And all of a sudden I had about 20 feet of hair, and I realized, like, oh my God, like, here we go. I couldn't use a drop spindle because it had to be such a large scale of thread. So I became the spindle, and the wood and that little mechanism became the human, essentially. You know, I'd work a full day and then I'd go until 3 in the morning at Amy's studio. Just, you know, my hands would bleed from the hair getting caught. And she was like, oh my gosh, you're standing here. Like, you are the women from my work. And it felt like I really identified with that, pulling up and down Amy's studio. Start in the kitchen, and then we'd go all the way to the bathroom. I'd wrap it around the bathroom doorknob. I'd come back. I'd wrap it around it again. We would have tons of hair like wrapped all over the studio around stools. I would braid it by honestly closing it in a window and then going back through the studio and then dropping it out the window. At one point we had like 60 feet of a braid hanging out of a 10th floor studio in Brooklyn, which was pretty hilarious. I spent a lot of time being quiet, thinking about Amy's work, how she views her work, the women inside the work, spending time inside of what I thought their brains would sound like. Sound component, that is the ambient sound. So Emily sat down with a bunch of people individually and discussed the concept of burden, what it meant to them, how people deal with it. Then she took all of those conversations and extracted all the words. So the breaths that were left, she created the ambient piece with. Disembodied hair is something that is, it's very thought-provoking, it's very emotional, because you're like, ooh, where did that come from? Or maybe for me, I'm like, oh, I want to touch, it's beautiful. Hair encompasses so much life. It is definitely a medium that no matter what, people have a very strong response to. It's something in our culture that somewhere along the line became a bit more shallow seeming, or because it was surface level, it was trivialized. But to be honest, I mean, if you talk to anybody about their hair, it's a very important part of them. There's a lot of emotion that goes into it, even something as silly as a bad hair day. I think that the stories that happen inside is actually way more important than the stories we expect to tell.
Okay. So I think she's fantastic. And her hair, Adriana's hair right now is like past her waist because she has all these extensions in it. It's really amazing how she can change her appearance so much. So this was the first image that I came across with the antique phone operators from, it's like early 1900s. And I was just impressed by the sheer like chaos of it and the chances of them getting it wrong. And I was also interested in eavesdropping and misconnections and all that sort of thing. And I had also, in 2009, I was in Kyoto, and there is this temple where they had this hair rope, and this is massive. And what happened was the temple had burned down, and then when they went to reconstruct it and lift up these huge beams, all the materials they had weren't strong enough, and then they made a hair rope with all the devotees just shaved their heads, and they created this rope, and they were able to rebuild the temple, which is pretty amazing. And to see the rope after hearing it sounds like a myth, but that was the hair. It was really amazing. So that's 2009, and then 3 years later it stuck with me. And these are just different. This also inspired me just looking around at this is off the internet, but these are somewhere in India, just electrical wires. But I'm just really intrigued by how disorganized, and thinking about, and I know this is not for sound, probably it's all electrical, but it's just, it looks crazy, but beautiful. It's like return to nature kind of situation. But at the same time, so this is the idea of the Raggedy Ann in the nutshell, is that I'm thinking about that, the operators and the telephone wire, but then I'm thinking, where would the situation be housed? And I had been looking at these 19th century images of Kinsey photography. There were this brothers that went around what's it called, the Southwest, and they documented the loggers. And the photos would just blew me away, because they would just, come in and deforest these whole areas, and then just build, to go on to the next section. So for me, this was the same thought in the hair mill, where everything was like being self-sufficient and produced from one source. Those are just stacked pieces of wood. And it also brings me back to thinking about ants and just all these micro systems in nature, and that sort of, I like all of the overlaps. That always fascinates me. So what happened was I ended up making this drawing, and I wanted to function as a key, so I could talk to or share visually. I had never worked with other people before, so I didn't know how to let them into my thought process. So I was like, I'll create a key drawing. But this was like 4 by 5 feet or something. So it was really massive. I didn't finish it ahead of time, so it wasn't something I was sharing as we're making the project. But the idea was that the myth behind everything was that these women live inside of these hollowed out trees, like these gigantic sequoias or something. And then here I placed the operators, and there's a nod to Emily. There's musicians in here, and up here there's the spools again that relates back to the beginning in 2001 when I was thinking about this stuff. There they are sleeping. And so this was the second installation. This was at the gallery you saw in the video. This is presently what is in San Antonio, Texas, which was really interesting, because what all of this, they had to make it wheelchair friendly, and I had never had to deal with any of those kind of regulations before. So this is what it looks like. I was kind of worried, but I think they did a great job, but it was a very different feel. So here you can see the size of the drawing, and so this wall here, I use the same wallpaper, and the idea is that they come out of the structure and go up, and then just disseminate just through the walls and beyond, sort of like in the trees, thinking that it goes on forever and ever, like any kind of communication device. So here's a shot of these old spools giving reference to, old factories. And they kind of worked as a chandelier of sorts, just to redirect the braids of hair. So when this was first installed at Site Santa Fe, I had a whole different idea that was carried out, but it was pretty much a failure. But I had brought, I think it was 12 or 13 trees into the space. And so this was an aerial view. This is the little model. So every red dot was going to be a birch, ended up being a birch tree. And this was a lean-to made out of birch trees. And you had to go inside of here to access the bundle. And that's where it kind of fell apart, is that people really didn't want to interact inside of a lean-to. So it was a very large learning experience for me. And so what happened was I dropped that idea when I showed it the other 2 times. And that's when that thing came up, that the 2-walled stage, people were much more willing to join in and participate. Having 800 feet of hair hanging around the studio, you start to get curious. So I just wrapped some around myself. But then, like, just through this play, which I think is really important, it was a horrible feeling. It's really hot. And but these drawings came out of it, thinking about like creating a cocoon of protection, or it's sort of like a different stage where you go, like a chrysalis where you go in and you're waiting. I assume like she's waiting for a bus or something, and she has all her important documents there, but she's kind of like a wild woman. And here there's 2 people in this situation, and they're having this conversation about apples. But then I brought this is 2000. Okay, so those drawings I showed you were 2018. And so this is from 2003, but it's definitely the same exact gesture. And it's kind of disappointing because I feel like I don't do anything new, but it's okay. I mean, maybe they're at the core of what's happening, because this is 2003. And I was thinking, like, my friends just started having children, or just a couple of them. And I thought it was such a strange experience to see them become the backdrop to a child. So here they're like, the baby's literally like forced into the mouth so that they're only supporting the child. But so another thing, along with the hair and the stretch, I do a lot of stretching of body parts. So the nose was something that I would go back to. This nose was 2002. And what's happening here is like they're sharing a nose, and there's an easy way out. They could make a sandwich just to make light of the situation. And this woman, maybe she regrets disconnecting, but she made a choice and she's ready to move on. And so I just dropped that in because it's going to come up later, and it made no sense of how I organize it. This one is pretty recent. This is called Steeped. Let's see where. And this is about, it's being in limbo in between different phases, and these women are swimming and not drowning, and they're holding their heads above the water, but in a different manner than we're used to. But it's again going back to those two paintings from 2010, where the anxiety and everything just physically removed by removing the head. Okay, and then here we are. This is 2019. Going into 2020, I was invited to have a solo show at the Madison Museum of Contemporary Art. And I was first invited to the Chazen to view works in the Chazen collection to see if I could do an overlap. So I first did this online research, and I pulled some images, and then I went there for the day and spent all this time with the actual works. And this one, inspired, it's a Japanese woodcut, but what really got me excited was this area where she's just tugging on something that doesn't exist. And I think that's something that I'm always thinking about, what's missing in the frame and what is instigating the actions. So here I'm focused on working with this idea. So here's that cloth, it's not, she's not on the other end, of course, and just taking the idea of something entering from outside and creating my own chaos with definite nods to Asian motifs. That the flowers are also from the print. But I was dealing with a lot of horses because I'm still in a situation where I'm in a limbo, moving from one thing to the next, and horses for me kind of embody that motion of moving forward. So this is how my drawings start out. This is on the actual watercolor paper. I use 300-pound hot press. That's my favorite type. So I'll just have I increased the contrast in the photos. These are just with my phone. But what happens is I'll start here, and then I always start with the faces, and then things develop from there. And when I'm adding the gouache, I have to erase all of the graphite so it doesn't get muddy. So again, same motif here as with the fabric coming from the outside. This is right around the time that I can't even say his name, Trump was elected. So this is sort of like, this is 2018. And so this is like a pirate, because I think he called all New Yorkers pirates at the time. So she had a flag in her hand, but as soon as he mentioned that, I was like, oh, I should make it black. And so these are all people in limbo, and they're very exhausted, and so this is how, again, I just showed you something very similar, but it's kind of funny. They went from this to this, but in the end, she looks like what's her name? Laura Linney, I think. Because I think I was watching something on Netflix. So then that face entered and it ends up in the painting. So just to say that I don't have references that I'm true to. I just go with I think she looks just like Laura. Is it Laura Linney? I forget her name. She's an actress. But there. Again, with the horses, this was about just going with an idea of like a visceral feeling of anger and discontent and like this raging feeling inside. And then I give little hints of like she's trying to escape a situation and that sort of thing. This one is about it's a common theme or recurring in Persian miniatures called the tree of knowledge. And so I took that idea and I sort of twisted it. And again, during the beginning of Trump, I was thinking about where all of our leadership was coming from. So I didn't want to depict him. There's no reason to paint him. So I decided it was from, the ass of a horse, but so I placed a woman inside of there. And then from there, I didn't want to focus on the Trump thing. It just started this whole thing where I shouldn't even put that in there. I could go back to it. See, I overlap because there's different themes that reoccur. So then in this one, I have, you see the tiny women coming out of the horse's parts. And this one's called Commencements. This is 2023, and this is pretty large for me. I think most of the work is 23 by 30, 40 by 50 kind of thing. And this was This was 50 by 60 or something. I can't remember the numbers, but so I thought I knew it was going to be about archery, but then I switched over to umbrellas because of this painting that this was made a long time ago, but sometimes I just give myself assignments, and this was an assignment where I would I'd make up a unicorn. So this was my idea of a unicorn. So I'm always working with metaphors because I never liked unicorns. I was never in that craze, but I decided I would assign myself a really lame topic and then see where it goes. But then the umbrellas came back because that painting was called umbrage, and then I get caught up in the etymology about umbrage being safety and that sort of thing. So then the arrows were replaced by the umbrellas. So that's it. And then a lot of the time, so I had this figure for like 2 years on my wall with not knowing how I was going to deal with it. I liked it, but I didn't know which way it should go. So what I do a lot is I work with tracing paper. And then I had this little thing come out, and then also you can see here, it's like another mouth of a muzzle of a horse. And then I knew where the painting was going, and I was so excited. And so this painting, it's called Narcissus, and I'm not really sure what's happening. There's this other horse emerging, but there's also, there's a lot of Catholic references of Saint Sebastian. This is during the pandemic, so he's the saint of what is it, like, I'm forgetting the word, pandemics. It's not pandemics, some kind of sickness thing. But anyway, the arrows are coming, and this person is about to walk forward. She's kind of pausing, and then this very important thing is happening. And then, so this is another reference. This was Valentino, I don't know, 2000, what did I put? I had seen this, I'm saying, it's a Valentino ready-made. And I was just so taken by this volcanic eruption on her dress. So then I used it. And this was, again, like thinking about the saints and how they offer different things on trays. And so that's a mix of different offerings. So you got some eyes, some breasts, some noses, and some ears. Not all of those are religious stories. And then again, I use the dress as a motif with like, I forget, there's a Russian stacking doll, but it was about like something I was going through in my own life where I needed to be brave. But at the same time, the fear of facing something. So here you have the stacking is concealing the human. And then this, I also work with pigs a lot. I didn't put any in this selection, but when I put the numbers, these are racing pigs, and it's sort of like thinking about time, the passage of time again. So it's stacking up, and so the horse is trying to get through this blockade. Again, okay, so I'm going to show you some things about masks. This is like an assault, or she's being choked and attacked with sunflowers. Very serious. And so I was thinking a lot about not the masks that you wear to protect you from COVID, but the masks that we wear every day when someone asks you how you're feeling or what you're doing, and you always have to put a smile on, or you just don't want to reveal how things are really going. So this is a painting I made about that. And different references to different, this is Tibetan, different things. But what I was thinking about with this painting was like a legal battle kind of thing, because it was about a divorce that I'm going through. So there was like a face off kind of thing. And then, so this as well, I went through this time period where I just couldn't use color. So because my brain was feeling like that. So here you have those cherries, kind of harkening back to the bread box. And so this woman is feeling just so, she can't access her brain. I guess it's a theme with me. And then there's this one thin line. And so this is also how I work. I do a lot of thumbnails, and then they sit around for a long time. And then, like, I think this was drawn in 2019. And then just this year, earlier in the year, I made this drawing. And I just titled it Ida. And it's related to the masks. But it's just this, I don't know, I think it's kind of obvious. Like, everyone has this, maybe has had this feeling of just not being able, when you're under a lot of stress or that sort of thing, you just don't, you're clouded over, or that sort of thing. That's another, I think it was on the next page of those little ideas. So like when I'm in my sketchbook, I'm just like free form, just drawing these little doodles. And then, so what I was thinking of, all these little things represent dishes. So then this, I just pulled, this wasn't my reference, but I just pulled this for this slide talk. But I was thinking about the absence of sound and my brain being in this lockdown position. And so I was thinking, like, if you opened up a cabinet and all this stuff came crashing down, that's what I felt like I was on the verge of. So, but I do it in a quiet way, but it's very noisy because there's so much repetition and obsessiveness, because I was just feeling a lot of tension. So, yeah, that's what that's about. And similar, there's all this stuff happening in here. Forest, they're folding up. These are old paintings of mine, and these women are folding up different textiles. There's broken instruments and all different things that are metaphors for me. And here is the face becomes like a bowl of little tiny. So this was kind of, it's about lying. So I'm using Pinocchio, but everyone's connected to someone else. So it's very much related to that, even though what's happening in my life more recently is not related to 20 years ago, I still see this connected nose thing as something that's really important. So they're all sort of intertwined, because you don't know where, like, when is someone going to stop lying, and where does it begin? And it's like very psychological for me. And then I did this tiny one, and this was recent. Same women from the other, I mean, the same idea that they're going to make a sandwich. And then this is related to that woman with the volcanic dress. So there's like a lot of, I think 19 figures in this painting. And here's like a big mountain of dishes, and that indicates how much time has gone by, and they all gather in this area. And I was thinking about the Me Too, and these women have 4 arms each, and they're like overtaxed and all these things. And they're offering each other different organs. And she's got a liver, there's tongues, there's all sorts of things. And it's sort of like a cocktail party, because everyone goes through bad times, I think, you know. So this is like a trash yard of old dishes, and dishes represent gatherings and eating and just passage of time. So there's like huge mound. Then this is back to when I was sitting down with some prints, and I love this. This was just like a lantern festival on the water, but my version, this is how I thought of it. But I ended up doing, I was working with a lot of turtles, and so I switched out the lanterns with turtle shells. So that's how that idea came about. And still the idea of being in limbo and floating, And I've spoken for an hour or 50 minutes. Okay. This again, lying in tongues and different things. The woman up here is snipping the noses of these snakes. It's sort of like I'm thinking of the Garden of Eden sort of thing with the snake, but this woman is cutting the noses off, and then in the trees, there's like these little, they look like little hot dogs. Everywhere around are little pieces of nose. And that is sort of like, you wonder if the lies are going to keep on coming, if they're going to propagate and come back. And the tongue also is sort of like, they're trying to pull it out, and where does it ever end, kind of thing. Again, more limbo. I really enjoy putting fireworks and things because it feels like things can erupt at any moment, because that's what the situation, and this is about the loss of a home and moving on and trying to think about what matters to you. Okay, now we're getting into what I'm doing now. So I have an 11-year-old son, and he really wanted to know what video games I played when I was little, and I didn't play any, but I had this very small handheld thing called Turtle Bridge from Nintendo. And what happened was, this little guy, he would jump, and I'm drawing this for my son so he would see what it was about. And this is from my memory, so it was kind of exciting. And like, so this guy has a package, and he jumps, and then if a fish comes along, the turtle dives down, and you can fall in the water before you hand off your package. And so I found it on eBay or whatever, and just, this is what it actually is. So, and this last image is like the infinite number of, very limited number of actions that take place. So my son was very bored because nothing really happens in the video game. So I took that idea because I thought it was a pretty cool idea that there's a bridge. So, okay, so these are just sketches, and I have, so this is what goes on the good paper, what my 300-pound paper. And this is like super contrast because I'm just dealing with ghost images. And again, I go for the faces first. So I'm introduced to the personality of whoever is coming out of these paintings. And this is what it ended. This is with my phone, so it's really bad quality. It's in the room with me now. But so you have this bear kind of disrupting things in this house. And then I really got into all these flags mean different things and nautical references, and I don't remember them all, but they're pretty ridiculous. So this was in reference to, again, my divorce and things happening and fighting over stuff and that kind of thing. And there's broken houses and lost eggs and all this stuff going on. And then this, I think it's the last one I'm going to show you, is what I'm working on. I think it's pretty much finished, but I have a few more things to do. Bring in the house again, the turtle, and their heads are beside them. So it's like all rehash of what I've been doing, and then firecrackers and everything. But the different thing about this is that I decided these are quite large images for me. I mean, the scale of these humans right here, it's different for me, and I'm hoping to go in that direction a little more. And that's all. I tried to keep time, so is that okay?
Yeah, no, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. We could do a round of applause now, but we'll do one again after the Q&A. But yeah, really wonderful presentation. Great to see all that work. But so folks, the Q&A is open. Feel free to jump in, unmute yourself, speak out loud, ask your questions in the chat, whatever you prefer. But it's great to hear your voices if you would like to unmute. And yeah, whatever you are thinking about, who wants to start it off? Go ahead.
Raise my hand. Is that me?
Yeah.
Hi. My questions are maybe a little bit difficult, but huge fan, longtime fan, by the way. Thank you. I loved seeing your sketches, and I know that most of these are paintings, but I've always thought of them more of drawing. And I mean, I know like how much is drawing and painting the same and different, but I'm really interested in hearing more about the kind of like the evolution of drawing in your life. Clearly, it's one of the most important things, and like maybe what it means to you, and a little bit about the negative space in your drawing, which seems really important in expressing your narrative as much as everything else.
So the reason why I call them painting is because I paint them. Yeah, I never used watercolor. Not watercolor, I'm gonna show you. You can see me, or obviously, right? I feel like I'm invisible.
I mean,
Yes.
Amy,
So-
you could stop the screen share, because then you'll get bigger and we'll be able to see what you're holding up more.
Oh, okay, so you can't, okay, cool. Okay,
But you
stop.
can always put it back on if we're gonna.
Okay.
work.
Okay.
Yeah,
here-
that's better. And then if you,
So I'm just showing you some brushes. Like I use tiny, so I am drawing because this is a zero, what is it? A triple, I forget, but this is a 6/0. And this is a messed up one. Here, I don't know where the good ones are. But anyway, I start off with these, and it's very rare that I use something more than like 2 or 3 inches. So yeah, I'm doing it with line, and I do go back a lot and do a lot of cross hatching to build up stuff. So, and it's on paper, and it gets tricky. I mean, when you're dealing with like the sale of things, I would be better off doing it on canvas. But I just really love working on paper, and the white of the paper, like even there's something about the lightness and how it incorporates with the paper that's so much different when you work on, like when I was working on wood. So I never really liked canvas because I don't like texture, because I deal with so many fine lines. I don't want bumps in the way, and I'm not interested in expressing things with like mark making and stuff, in the sense of like the fluidity, or the actual weight of the paint. And so I like how it just becomes one. And then there's a limit, like it fills, the paper will only accept so much before you really screw it up. So I kind of like that, because I did work with oils, but I got very sick just from the fumes, and I just stopped using them. So it was sort of like when you're with the oils, you could just wipe it off and start something else, but it's very precise with the paper, and I kind of enjoy that. But the white of the paper came out of and using the white to conceal half of a body, to express like something being submerged in water or something, I really enjoy doing, because there was a time where and I still do it sometimes, where I just overload the whole thing. But I think what happens is whatever the narrative sort of gets diluted by everything holding the same weight. So it's funny, because I started doing this in school, and I thought, oh, this looks like I'm not finishing, and it's like a cop out, and it's not less work, because I really have to be really precise, or not precise, but I have to make sure it works, because it doesn't always work. And then that's why I like that, the example with that horse with the woman inside, the narcissist painting, like that horse was hanging out forever, and it wasn't working at all. And then I just, that painting is totally filled in. It doesn't have white. Maybe there's some white up top, but that's like just saturated. But I think that was necessary for that one. But
I think so too. I was thinking about the piece with the women in the bird cages in her head, and I was just thinking like how clean and spacious the composition was, but then like how busy and crammed full her head was. And I felt like that contrast like really makes her head feel even more kind of chaotic and cluttered. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think it is about the weight. And then like there's I've overloaded it with, it's so busy that you need a rest. Like just the balance, I guess.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other questions? What else are people wondering?
Someone's walking in the night.
Yeah, I noticed that.
Oh, I was kind of wondering because you so much think about hair as this medium, as kind of this documentation of time and process and whatnot. And I think obviously you're making watercolor paintings, which you make with a brush, which itself has hair. So do you think that there is, in a way, a connection between medium and subject matter in your visual motifs?
I never thought about that. About the hair and the brush. That's like wow. Is it a connection? I'm not sure. I mean, I think when I was working on wood, I felt like I was making decals because like the paint would sit on the surface, and then if I left area blank or if I just created one color behind it, it didn't feel right. The weight of the image wasn't gelling, I guess, with the weight of the support. So paper just felt right. And I must say, I like how little space it takes up. That's pretty nice, especially in New York where you don't have that much storage and stuff. You can move it around, you can cut it up. Yeah.
I have
Thanks.
another question.
Yes.
I don't need to ask too many questions, but I'm just curious. I mean, I can see there's many drawings hanging on the wall behind you.
Uh-huh.
Do you usually work on a body of work at the same time, or numerous pieces, or just zero in on one? Or do you make like lots of iterations of one, or how does it work for you?
I work on at least 3 at a time, just to bounce between them, because sometimes I need the distance, and they inform each other. And also I have to sometimes, like when I'm almost finished with something, I want to start something because I know how to finish that one that's almost finished, but it's very boring. So I have to keep myself engaged. So it's sort of like a cycle. I don't want to be left like with nothing, or it just happens that way. I just like to have things overlapping and to move. And then also I've had times where physically, like I'll get carpal tunnel and I'll have to wear a brace. So I have to be really conscious of like, if I do too much tiny little leaves, I'm going to hurt myself. So that's why I'll go to drawing or just make something bigger, just to be conscious and do some exercises because you can hurt yourself.
I know. I work similarly and have similar challenges. And so this
Yeah.
is probably good for all these students
Yeah.
to know. I'm a printmaker, so I'm always talking about like, non-toxic work environment. So when you're older, like you don't have to worry about that so much. But yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hey, students, who has
Let's
questions?
do chat, people.
Are there some chats coming in? I haven't seen any. I'm not. Yeah, chat, speak. What are you wanting to know? Nothing else coming up for folks?
I bet we see a painting with a paintbrush as the subject matter coming up soon.
So I'm not sure how to answer the I don't have the issue with face blindness and the two braids. I really think it like harks back to being obsessed with Laura Ingalls Wilder. I was like every day, Little House on the Prairie was it for me. And she lives inside of me. And there was a lot of things during that time where there's like in the ether, like girls in pinafores. We had Raggedy Ann, we had Holly Hobby, all these things that people probably don't know that are listening, but there are all these like, I think it's like prairie and like frontiers women. So I think that just was like a holdover, and the two braids. Yeah, that's where that came from, I think. Yeah, so and how big are my paintings? And the experiment with photography. Have you ever wanted to experiment?
No, now they're popping in. So yeah, how
Okay, what I'm gonna do is I don't know if this will be
I can read them aloud too, if that's helpful.
okay, but I can't see what I'm showing you. Is there a way I can see what I'm showing you so I don't like show you nothing?
So we can see, so you
I
see
could do a
yourself?
speaker view.
Oh yes, click on
Okay.
speaker view. Yeah.
Well, it didn't work. You're just like looking at my nose right now or something.
Well, we
Show-
can see the paper behind you.
Okay,
Yeah.
there, I see myself. So I kind of, okay, so 22 by 30. This is the next size, 41 by 50, I think. But right here, and then this one I haven't, that's like the ghost drawing that I do. And then I'm always have these things below are the tracing paper that I'm always making adjustments with. And then okay, that painting, I didn't include this. I'm trying to get rid of people. So these are anthropomorphic trees. Let's see. We have some more turtles. And these are pretty small. So this is the turtle theme happening. Oh, I could show you a very claustrophobic painting that I don't know what's gonna happen. And then that one, 22 by 30, but it will be a square. I don't like the rectangle. And this is, can you even see that? Probably not. It's a
Very
drawing. Yeah. Let me see if I turn my light around. Okay. Probably can't see it on purpose because I don't want that much. I don't want the stuff. Okay. Oh. Okay, so
Yeah, that's really helpful in terms of scale. Yeah. So this next one, have you ever wanted to experiment with photography with your vision? Not sure exactly
my
what about the
I
vision,
have-
but yeah.
yeah, I don't
photography
get
playing a
that.
role. Does photography play a role? Maybe is the question.
It hasn't. I often like when I had all that hair on, I was like, oh, I gotta go to the park and do something crazy with this. I didn't know it, it was just like so exciting, but I didn't do anything with it. And that's good because I ended up donating that installation to the Ruby City. But I think I respond more to sculpture and video and photography myself sometimes. Like it sticks with me when I'm out experiencing other art. I think sculpture always hits me in a way that nothing else does. But photography,
They added to the question, which it doesn't fully clarify for me, but like your style of painting applied to a real life scene. Oh, maybe they mean like staging photographs. Like, I'm not sure if I don't know, Alec, if you want to clarify, I don't know if you mean like, has Amy considered like creating a set, staging a photograph with actors or something? That was what sprung to mind with that question. I'm not sure, but it's a little like what happened.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean.
oh, cool.
like having a scene like set up that looks like one of your paintings, or like recreating it like in a photo shoot scenario.
And it's kind
I,
of what happens with the piece with the hairstylist that you were showing, where it kind of
yeah,
came to life.
um, I haven't experimented with that. I mean, if there was interested people, it's not something that I would focus on. Like having done 2 installations, I did this and then something at the Reina Sofía in Spain. I didn't like having one idea and working for that one idea for a year. I just didn't enjoy it. And it was so much physical, like I like research, no problem with that, but it's a lot of like purchasing and lugging and it's like to be a sculptor or installation is something other, because I want to think more and have more ideas and not just commit myself to one thing. So that was a struggle for me when I was dealing with both of those projects. But it was just like, you sort of know what you want it to look like, and then you're just working towards it. And that's like paintings, but you get gratification sooner. And there's not so many, also with the sculptures, different things from the outside influence, you have so much control of what happens in your painting, but then if the price isn't right for this kind of hair or that, then you have to change your ideas because of outside things. And then there's storage. Don't like storage. Yeah.
Yeah, in the painting world, you can invent whatever you want, right? And it
Yeah.
doesn't weigh anything or cost anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so 2 more questions. How long did it take you to decide your art style? So I guess
I think I was working in this style forever. I
you
have
probably
these,
didn't decide per se. It probably happened.
yeah. I mean, when I was I didn't go to graduate school, so I went to Cooper Union, and when I was there, my teachers always like tried to push me to loosen up, to do this and that, and I tried all those things, and I was very unhappy. And then to make more and to do it faster and that sort of thing. And then I took a year in Germany on an exchange, and that was such a great experience because I did all the humanities and got them out of the way, and I was just like, it was like a artist experience, because I just went there and I just worked, and I was like, I just need time and I have to trust my inner voice. And because also in Germany, I didn't have to explain my life away every 2 weeks in a critique. I was just working, so I really enjoyed it, so I was okay with that. The pressure, it's hard when it's all about speed and presenting something, or so you talk to this person and they said this, and then you have to prove that you took it in. That was difficult, but it's important. I understand. Yeah, because sometimes the student needs to, experiment and do different things. But I think I was like ready to just focus for a while.
Yeah, I
I
think.
think I'm just slow about everything. I'm a slow person. It takes me time to do stuff, and as soon as I accepted that, it was a good thing. I didn't fail as much because I wasn't against myself. So I don't know. It's hard when you're in school because you're in school for a short period of time and you need the input from the people around you and that sort of stuff. But
Yeah, school can be very compressed, but once you're out of school, you have a lot more freedom. So yeah, that's helpful for our students.
Also, a lot more other challenges, though.
yeah, there's life.
Yeah.
So 2 more quickly, just where in Germany was the exchange program?
It's called the Städelschule, and it's in Frankfurt. And I studied under Thomas Byler. That was like you had like some famous person and you saw them once a semester. It was like quite a nice cushy job. And everyone, there's another thing was like everyone, that I was the youngest student there because in Germany you have this like after high school you go to I don't know what they call it, but it's sort of like, just as an example, the person I shared a studio was with a cane. He was a caner, you know, like caning chairs and that sort of thing. So he had that craft. He went to craft school, I guess, for caning. And the other woman, she did stained glass.
Oh, wow.
And I'm just like this joke from and really young. So, but it was interesting because they those experiences added to their work, you know. So
Cool. So maybe I have one more is about influences. So who is your most significant influence and how did they influence you?
that's hard.
Mm.
I don't know. I sometimes and then I'll regret saying whatever I do, but I love Robert Gober and I love Louise Bourgeois and painters. I'm not sure. I mean, it's harder because I think I love looking back at anything from the 15th century is like my jam. So it's a lot of anonymous people, but I love looking at Persian miniatures and that sort of thing. So I don't even know who they're by, but I like that period of time and the encapsulated, you know. And it's funny because it's a lot of those works were made by so many hands. Like someone would do whether they're good at horses and someone was good at drawing tiles or whatever. But I like the density and the narrative and how the space is arranged and the flattening of the space. And I'm also really inspired by, you know, Japanese wood blocks and that sort of flat art. Yeah.
That all makes a lot of sense. Well, that's fantastic. If there's any last questions, we can take them. Otherwise, we will perhaps wind down. Last call for questions.
Yeah, I do have a question. Thank you very much, Amy, for your sharing your incredible work. I really do appreciate most of your work. But I'm very curious about notions of absence in your work, the way you sort of the ratio of the faces and the way you play with that in your work. Do you want to speak a little bit about that?
The acts, what I didn't.
Notions of absences, like the presence and absence, the way the ratio of the faces from your forms and how you play with that in the work. I'm very curious about that. Do you want to speak to
when
that?
I erase, when I talk about erasing the drawing, it's to avoid mixing the water-based gouache with the graphite. Is that, but that doesn't sound like.
No, I'm talking mostly about like the notions of absence and presence. Like you have this body without,
okay.
you know, like I think there is so much absence within the work. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I'm
Oh
very
yeah, like there's only half of a body or something.
Exactly. Do you want to speak to that maybe? Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's about like the fact that what interested me in that Japanese woodblock print with that small piece of fabric going off, I think it gets my imagination going and it expands the idea beyond what I'm drawing and it leaves it open. And because these works change for me over the years too. Like I'll do something with an intention and then 5 years later it means something totally different. And if I'm so set on defining, you know, the space or putting everything in, I think it becomes really stagnant and there's no room for that kind of curious openness. So I think that is a big part of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, there's also something interesting about like the fact that there's an erasure of identity of the women in question. So it sort of opens up the conversations that could be had about most of the women you're playing with, you know?
I don't see.
I didn't think about that. I'm just wondering also is like.
No, that's funny because the identities, I mean, all these women are from my head. So, they don't have fully formed identities. And what I do, I think a lot of the times, like the features of some of the women are just things that I'll be curious about at that time. Like if I'm on the subway and I'm really thinking about some kind of nostril or some feature, I'll just like kind of take it in from strangers around me, and then it kind of funnels into my paintings. But I don't, the identities, I don't know. I think they all live together in some land. I don't think I'm cutting off their identities, because I'm not sure they're fully formed. Does that make sense? I don't know. This is an interesting question. But they don't exist anywhere, so I don't know if I'm hiding their identities.
Well, to me, it's almost like you're leaving something open, like
Yeah.
there's a piece missing, or there's something missing, and the viewer can fill that in. Or
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for. Yeah.
I mean, I think it's ambiguous, right? I think that ambiguity is one of the strengths in the word, is one of the things that I'm quite sort of fascinated or drawn to the work. Not necessarily questioning that, but I think it's very strong, you know? In a way,
Okay.
very ambiguous, you know?
I guess, yeah. I think that's a good thing. Yeah. Ambiguous.
yeah, I think that the negative space works that way too for me.
Yeah.
It came up earlier, where there's, there are a lot of really specific details in terms of settings, but then there's also a lot of openness and areas where you don't see like the full environment, right? And you can kind of fill in the blanks a little bit. At least for me, that's very powerful.
Yeah, that's what I hope for, that it just lets more, you bring your own. That's the really giving thing about when I do show the work and I'm present. It's people tell me like the most personal stories, and I think it's because my work is very personal and I put it all out there, but I don't explain it to like everyone. But I think that's really rewarding, that it opens that channel up, that people feel like they could share, so for me, I feel like I've reached them. If they do that, it's nice. So
yeah, I really like the series with the drawings of the form, the hair, like the large, like the hair wrapped up from the head, and you just see the hands out hanging out.
okay.
I really love those series, actually.
Thank you.
You, by the way, for sharing your work. They're quite impressive.
Yeah. Thanks.
Great. Well, great conversation. Great presentation. Final last call. Anything else? All right. Well, folks, if folks want to unmute and give a big round of applause, that would be great. So feel free to unmute and maybe we can show Amy some love.
Yeah. Thank you.
We're getting a few folks here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
feel
much.
free to shout out anything, goodbyes, what have you. And class is dismissed, and I will see you all next week back in the auditorium for our duo coming from Latvia. So that will be an exciting evening. Lots of thank yous coming out in the chat. Oh my God, they're pouring in. They're pouring in. All right. Have a good night, everyone.